Good afternoon and good morning, viewers, those who are in India. On 26th of this month, one of our representatives there in DC Bureau just called us and let us know about, and we already published the report on that for the COHNA. There were 100 Hindus gathered at Capitol Hill, which is never ever happened before, from 15 states. So I was curious that why 100 Hindus from 15 states, what is happening at Capitol Hill? And then I inquired and came to know that it was the COHNA organization. So I called up them, and we have with us Pushpita ji. She is the communication officer. And fortunately, after a much more reminder and much more efforts were taken to get Nikunj Trivedi, who is the co-founder of the COHNA, and he is the president also. Welcome, Nikunj bhai and Pushpita ji.
Namaste.
Before introduction, I was just talking about the COHNA, that I know somebody there, and she is Jasmine Desai, and she informed me that there is something happening at Capitol Hill. So she lives in Richmond, so she could not travel to cover whole the event. But she told me that this thing happened and that has never been happened. We should focus on that. So then I called Pushpita ji and we communicated, and we are here to discuss about it. So can you just tell us what was the event that happened in DC?
Sure. So before we do that, thank you so much, Mananji, for having us on your platform. We very much appreciate it, and we hope your audience will enjoy listening to us. So just in a nutshell, like you said, we were very excited because we held our third National Hindu Advocacy Day on the Hill. So as the name implies, this is the third time we are doing it. We have done it, we started in 2022. And when we started, it was a very small event. 30 people came for the first event, but we were excited that 30 people took time off even then on a work day, right? Because going to Capitol Hill for an event means basically you take the whole day off, even if you're a local person. And then obviously we had 100 Hindus from 15 different states, which means people including 5 or 6 people from California. So you can imagine the amount of time people were investing in flying and making sure that they were there for this event. And the purpose of our being there for this event is basically to make sure, and this is something which is very closely tied to COHNA's mission, which I will let Nikunj talk about in a minute, but we want to make sure that Hindus living in America have their voice represented wherever it needs to be, starting at the highest levels of national policy making, but also at the state level, at the city level, in school boards, in your cities, in community college, everywhere, right? And similarly in your workplaces, your children's schools, colleges, Hindus are in all of these places, and Hindus and Hinduism needs to have a voice in all of these places. Now, there are no shortcuts to that process, and the only way to get your voices heard is to show up in a professional, organized manner, and make an effort to have your voices heard, which is exactly what we were doing. So I'd love to hand it over to Nikunji, and he can talk about how this is pretty much the core mission of what COHNA was founded for.
Yeah, no, thank you, Pushpita ji. I think you covered it really well. I think, when COHNA was started in middle of pandemic on April 2020, a bunch of Hindus from different places came together and said, we need to have a platform for Hindus to come together, work together, empower each other, and have a voice, whether it's in politics or in the political process. We don't get involved in politics per se, but in the political process, in education systems, in schools, the way Hinduism is being taught from 6th grade onwards. in the regular community where there are different types of different groups, Hindus, Muslims, Christians, Jews, different groups that are Sikhs, whoever's in the community is working for their own community's voices. A lot of times Hindu voices tend to lack or they're not organized properly. So one of the reasons why we decided to do that is to empower Hindus to become a voice in the local issues that are going on. So whether it's in California, whether the caste issue that happened in California, or in New York City where there were hate crimes in Mandir that was attacked, things like that, COHNA gets involved in many different aspects. So since the last 4 years, we've been doing a lot of this work, and the Advocacy Day on Capitol Hill has become a signature event for us. This was our third one. And as Pushpita said, when we started, we had a small group of people, but now we have 100 Hindus who came in from 15 different states. And one signature feature for this year was the voices of Hindu youth. We had about 25 or 30 Hindu youth who came from different places as well, all the way from California to New York, many places, North Carolina, you name it. So like they joined and they also talked to the congressional members to say how hatred against the community is prevalent, and we need to take steps to address those issues. Hindu phobia is quite prevalent, unfortunately, and it's growing. So the youth were very active in talking to congressional members, and you can see their presence in the videos or the press releases that we have done. There was a very powerful student panel of students from Berkeley, Stanford, and University of Georgia. They spoke about the challenges that they saw when they were in high school or when they were in college, and how Hinduism is not properly represented or talked about. So that was a very important signature feature of the event. And of course, we were talking about HRS 1131. It's a House resolution that was introduced by Congressman Sri Thanedar that condemns Hindu phobia and anti-Hindu bigotry, as well as attacks on temples while celebrating the achievements of the Hindu community. So that's in a nutshell what we were doing on Capitol Hill.
So why did COHNA decide to do this event? And what is COHNA? How does this tie into other mission?
Sure. So as I mentioned, one of the things that we saw, so in 2019, if you think about what was going on, the Indian government, for example, created this CAA, right? So Citizenship Amendment Act. They also abrogated Kashmir's Article 370. So these types of actions that were going on in India were having an impact on the diaspora. All of a sudden, we were considered, if you supported humanitarian laws, if you supported, the indigenous rights of Kashmiri Hindus, you were considered like agents of Indian government. You were being targeted. You were considered Hindu extremists. So many things were going on, and students, especially like I said, were being impacted. So that was building up to why we started COHNA. So in April of 2020, we all got together and we said, let's create a platform where we can challenge this kind of anti-Hindu, bias, Hindu phobia, things like that, but also educate people about what our culture really is. So we decided to start COHNA as a grassroots platform. What does grassroots means? Is where you are locally, wherever you are locally, you can have someone in COHNA work with you and make sure that your interests are protected. Your kids have the right to study Hinduism properly. So many different aspects. So that's one of the reasons what COHNA did, is to provide that platform. If you go back to 2020, to give you an example of the impact, the state of New York was trying to create a bill that would teach swastika as a symbol of hate in New York schools, okay? New York City schools. Now, New York City is the largest school district in the US. So once you start teaching swastika as a symbol of hate without understanding the history of it and everything like that, that was not acceptable. So we fought very hard along with other Hindu organizations, Indian organizations, Buddhists, Jains, many people, and we've defeated a bill twice. So it was very important, because if we did not raise our voice, our own students and other students will learn that there's a symbol that is very, very sacred to Hindus, but it is now called a symbol of hate. So imagine a young student learning about that and coming home and seeing the swastika and saying, wow, why are we having a symbol of hate in our home? So that's why it was so important. So COHNA got involved in that. And then came the Cisco lawsuit in California, where two Indian engineers were sued for discriminating against another employee on the basis of caste. The challenge was that entire edifice, or the premise of the case, was dependent on a lot of anti-Hindu data provided by groups like Equality Labs and stuff. So we and many other organizations got together and we fought back. And as you know, the bill was defeated because the governor vetoed it. So it was a big victory for the Hindu community and the Indian American community, but it was working together with everyone to make that happen. So these are the types of things, not just there, but even in parents, like, when there's school issues going on, whether a student was bullied, or like I said, the swastika issue, but also caste, when Hinduism is being taught incorrectly, or there's a bias against India, things like that, we stand up and we equip the parents to challenge the school system and make sure that there's equal treatment of Hindus in the school districts. So there are so many things that we've been involved in, but this just gives you an idea of the type of work and impact that COHNA makes.
I'll just add to that,
You're on mute, Manan bhai.
I said I'll just add to that because it's not just caste and things like that. Our festivals are under attack, and our traditions are under attack. So, many people say we don't want to be political, and we don't want to be political either. But when your traditions are under attack, there is no choice but to defend them, right? So, for example, Holi. Not many people know, but for almost 4 years now, different university campuses, and these are the top elite universities that we want our kids to go to, that do have hundreds or sometimes thousands of Hindu kids on the campus, they have been celebrating something called Holi against Hindutva. And that is just emblematic of the kind of situation that our kids and our youth specifically face. So what does a student do when they see something like that? So a perfect case study of that just happened 2 months ago. So in April, there is a small liberal arts college in Ohio, of all places, called Oberlin, and it's a very well-rated liberal arts college. And there was one Hindu student there who basically saw that there was a flyer up for Holi against Hindutva, and it was being sponsored by two non-Hindu organizations, the Asian American students and the Muslim American students. So this student, being a single voice, did not know what to do, which is, I think all of us can relate to that feeling. We see something, we don't know what to do because it's one person. What do you do? So this student reached out to another a Hindu student advocacy organization called Hindus on Campus, which is an online group, and that works very deeply in all the campuses. HOC alerted the world to this with their Instagram and Twitter, and we collaborate very closely with HOC. But so we were also amplifying it on social media, but I think the critical difference is COHNA is on the ground too, right? So we have a very strong team in Cleveland, and they swung into action. We found out all of this on Friday, like lunchtime. So, in the 2-3 hours left in the business day, they immediately tried to start calling the university president, emailing her, trying to get in, contact with them. And when the day closed without that, by Friday evening, they decided they were going to show up there to protest. So as a national team, we worked with them. We made sure, we designed posters that they could print, and we supported them in every way. But on Sunday, I don't know, some 25, 30 of them showed up. Very cold weather. You can see they're all wearing these thick snow jackets, but they're standing there as the attendees go in. And they, of course, tried to attend too. They were not allowed to attend. But they said, look, you are talking about our sacred festival. What gives you the right to talk about Holi, and what gives you the right to say Holi is about Hindutva or against Hindutva or anything? So if you are absent from this conversation, the other side has a free run. And that's why being there and speaking up is so important, and that's also what we were doing in DC at a different level, because I can tell you I've talked to maybe 100 lawmaker officers by now. And one thing we always hear is, oh, we don't hear much from you guys. You guys means the Hindus, right? Whether it's a city politician talking about his or her city, at a state level, at a national level, we are not making our voices heard. And that is why it is so important to have organizations like COHNA, where individuals can come together and make their voices heard as a group.
So many of us would like to stay away from politics, right? Why it is important for Hindu to do an advocacy?
Yeah, so it's very interesting you say. So let me explain the difference between politics and advocacy. Okay, so imagine I'll give you an example. Okay, imagine if you are a parent. Okay, you are waiting for your child in the bus stop. Okay, it's 2:30 p.m. but school is out. The bus is supposed to come, but your child is not there. 3:30 p.m. you don't know where your child is. 4:30 p.m. you don't know where your child is. 5:30 p.m. you get a call from the school that your child will not come home anymore. Why? Because you have now been accused of sexual harassment of your child. What are you going to do there? Who's going to come and help you? This actually happened to a parent in New York. So when something like this happens, who is going to help you? Who is going to help from the community to protect your rights? That helping is called advocacy, because you want to make sure that you protect the rights of people. You stand up against false narratives. And in this particular situation, Ayurvedic massage was misinterpreted as sexual harassment. Okay, so for 9 months, we fought with these agencies and stuff, along with some other community organizations, and we finally got the student, the parent, to get the kid back. And it took a long time. So that's what advocacy is. Advocacy means standing up for your rights and making sure people understand what your needs and wants are as a community. Okay, so whether you support or oppose something, whether you are educating people on what advocacy, what your culture is, all of those things are advocacy. Okay, politics is a little bit different. So there's a lot of confusion. But advocacy does require engagement with different types of political leaders. If someone is going to pass a law that is going to have an impact. So, for example, I tell all the hotel people, for example, let's say they passed a law saying that, Indians cannot be allowed to own hotels anymore. Do you think everyone's going to say, oh, I'm not going to be involved in politics anymore? Or tomorrow morning, somebody passes a law saying that this temple that is sitting in the middle of, in this highway, close to the highway, 5 miles into the highway, we are going to build a new development and this temple will be demolished tomorrow. You think you don't want to go and talk to the law enforcement or political leaders? Is that going to be considered politics? And you'll say, no, I don't want to be involved in politics. No, you are going to fight for your rights. So when you fight for your rights, that's what advocacy means. It does not mean politics. Because in India, most people have grown up in India, so they realize, they think politics is a dirty word and, oh, I don't want to get it. This all sounds to be politics. No, to protect your rights, to educate people is advocacy, not politics.
I'll also say that, we have now, got changes in quite a few laws, as Nikunji mentioned. So the swastika law, right? Overwhelmingly, the staffers and lawmakers that we spoke to, they were very thankful to be educated, because they just were not aware that swastika had such a wide. I know for us it sounds impossible that somebody could not be aware. And I live in California, which is not only home to a lot of Hindus, but it's also home to 40% of America's Buddhists, right? Yet I met staffer after staffer who was not even aware that the swastika had an alternative meaning. I personally was shocked because, California prides itself on diversity, on inclusion. And here there were staffers in our state representatives' offices who were like, wow, we had no idea. Many did and many didn't. So, to me, it was almost like, wow, in an age of Google, you don't know this, but people don't. And so, again, it's not their responsibility to come knock on our doors and say, hey, what's your problem? How can I help you? It's actually our responsibility to go knock on their doors and say, this is my problem. I need your help. Or no, this is what you have not understood about me. Let me tell you. That is advocacy. And there is no alternative to it, honestly. And I think some of the problems that the Hindu community today faces in diaspora, wherever they live, US, Canada, other places, the issue is that, we have been, for many variety of reasons, very focused on different issues. And we have not made time and we have not prioritized making this effort to speak up about ourselves and to tell our own stories, because it does take time. This is not a simple, I'll send one email and the world will change. I wish it was, but it isn't. It's a long process. It can be fairly tedious. And it takes a lot of patience and commitment and consistency and persistence. But all of that stuff does work in the long run. So people look for shortcuts. Oh, can you call the consulate? Can you call so-and-so? Can you call Modi ji? I'm just like, there is nobody waiting to save us. We have to save ourselves. We have to do our own work. Just like in the Gita, right? When Arjun is questioning whether he needs to fight the war, Bhagwan Krishna doesn't tell him that, go and do some havan or puja and I'll fix everything. He just counsels him and says, you still have to do your work. So we still have to do our advocacy.
Many of us are in immigration limbo, right? What does advocacy mean for us?
Great point.
Yeah, I'll just quickly jump in on that. I think, again, this is a place where we mix up politics and advocacy, right? So unless you are a green card or a citizen, you should not be donating to candidates, and you should not be trying to vote, obviously, or canvass, get very deep involved in their campaigns. However, you are entitled to freedom of religion, you are entitled to freedom of speech, and you are entitled to protection from bullying. So if anybody is trying to bully you for your faith, if your speech or your freedom to religion is being hampered on, you should speak up, just like you would call the police if your house was burgled. You wouldn't say, oh, I'm an H1B, so I'm not going to call the police, I'm just going to let the thief get away, right? So just because you're H1B doesn't mean your child can get bullied, or doesn't mean that somebody can discriminate against you for being Hindu. But Nikunj, you were saying something.
No,
Yeah.
you said it right. So exactly, it's about everybody has rights. So even illegal immigrants in America have rights. As funny as that sounds, but it is true. So if you are a legal immigrant, whether it's to H1B or any other means, you definitely have rights. You just don't have some rights, like in terms of what Pushpita said, in terms of voting, in terms of endorsing political candidates, things like that. So you stay away from that. But if somebody's harassing you, if somebody is saying there's a law that is being introduced and things like that, you have the right to pick up the phone and say, hey, I am a constituent here, I live here, I pay my taxes here, this law is going to have an impact on me. That is very much within the realm of civil rights, and everybody can be doing that. There is no issue if you don't have a green card or something like that. So that's what, as Pushpita said, I just wanted to summarize that.
I also want to just say one thing, because when we talk about advocacy, generally what the media and what gets press is the most difficult issues, right? Like caste or swastika or some really. But advocacy is everyday little things too, right? So if you make the effort to go do a presentation on Diwali in your child's class, that is also speaking up and making sure that you are helping your your kids' school teachers and children understand Diwali from a proper perspective. Or you take part in an ERG in corporate, for example, right? A lot of Hindus are in corporate America. There are a lot of forums to speak up for your religion in corporate America, like especially in the last few years under the DEI network. A lot of their employee ERGs, they may have different names in different companies, but you will find that these are affinity groups where you can get together as Hindus and do simple things, whether it's celebrating Yoga Day, celebrating Diwali, Navratri, things like that. So it's not always, it's not just standing and protesting in a street. Certainly, advocacy does include that, but that, if you think about it like a spectrum, that's one end of the spectrum, and the other end of the spectrum is simply speaking up in your kid's school and saying, hey, Navratri is coming, I would like to do a presentation in my child's class about how this is a great fit for women's empowerment and diversity. That's also advocacy.
So why it is so important, and what will be the impact of it to do the advocacy and stuff like that?
Yeah, go ahead, Pushpita. You want to start, and then I'll.
Oh, okay. I think for all the reasons we were just saying. So, Mananji, you run this business, this news business, right? And I come from a communications world too. So there is an old adage that says, if you are not telling your story, somebody else will. And so that is what has happened to Hindus. We've been here for 30, 40 years, but we have been so busy that we have not told our stories, which is why every day we wake up and we are surprised that, oh my God, how can they say this? How can they say that? And not just they, our own kids are telling us things about our faith that shock us. We are like, how come we were not even able to tell our own children what our faith is, what our values is? So I think there is actually no alternative. You have to tell your stories. Otherwise, you are going to be in a situation where the Audrey Trutchkes of the world are going to be teaching your kids and getting paid for teaching your kids what Hinduism is.
Nikunj bhai, would you like to add to this?
Yeah, imagine. So as she said, I'll give you an example. What if your child comes home and says, today I learned that Rama is a misogynistic pig and that Krishna or Mahabharata endorses rape? Okay, imagine someone coming home and your child is saying, hey, my professor told me that Mahabharata endorses rape, or Ram is a misogynistic pig. What are you going to say? Are you going to say, oh, beta, it's okay, this happens, that happens, etc., or you're shocked? You think, oh my God, how can you learn this in school? But
Yep.
guess what? And your son or daughter is going to say, Dad, should I believe you, or should I believe my professor who has double PhDs in religion, South Asian history, etc., etc.? Who should I believe? Now you're going to be shocked, but this is actually the reality. So the point is, it's not just about it's not about politics or anything like. It's also about these types of things. The impact. If you don't tell your story, if your child doesn't know what the right thing is, or if you're not out there telling or challenging these things, then someone else will say. If you stay quiet, if someone says you are a thief, and you say nothing, next time they say you are a thief, you say nothing. Third time they say you're a thief, and you say nothing, then guess what? You are a thief. Whether you are a thief or not, it doesn't matter. The narrative, the propaganda out there basically makes you a thief. So just like that, if people keep saying Mahabharata is like this, Ramayana is like this, Gita is like this, or Krishna did this, or look, Devi is like this, then guess what? That's the reality. And that's what you see being taught in schools and many places and on social media. So if we don't have our story, if we don't challenge this anti-Hindu prejudice, if we do not have our own narrative, somebody else is going to tell our story, and it's not going to be nice all the time.
Now, I'll give one more example, which I think everybody can relate to, right? So many times when we challenge, we feel success means changing the views of the teacher. That's a really high bar. If you do, that's great. You're obviously a very charismatic person or a miracle worker. But what happens is, I'll give you the scenario very common, right? So there's a teacher in class, or in a corporate setting, right? There is a trainer. So anytime you have a teacher or a trainer, they already have the authority of the institution in them. So the 30 people sitting in the class are listening to that person, mostly ready to believe what they're saying. Now, in a corporate setting, that trainer could be teaching, or maybe it's a class on international ethics of doing business or something, right? And this has happened to COHNA members, and I'm sure this is a very common experience. They will talk about doing business in India, and they will very quickly bring in caste, and then they will very quickly say that, when you work with Indians, this caste issue is going to be a huge issue. There are probably at least 5 Indians sitting in that training, and whether they agree or not, if they keep quiet at that time, then all the other 25 non-Indians sitting in that classroom, for them it's confirmed, right? Because the trainer, who is a position of authority, is saying this is what doing business with Indians means, or Hindus means. And then the 5 Hindus in the room don't challenge anything, they just nod along. Then how can you ever hope to fix that thing? Same thing in a classroom, right? If a class of 7th graders is sitting and they open their world religion book and they read about Hinduism, which is defined only through caste, conflict, and cows, and all the Hindu kids in the class don't say anything, how are you ever going to convince their peers that this is not what Hinduism is about? If people speak up in that moment, you will most likely not change the opinion of the person teaching it. You will certainly not change the books in a school setting. But what you do is you create a seed of doubt in the other 25 people or 30 people who are in the class, because then they see that somebody who is from that culture or faith is not agreeing with what the teacher is teaching. And that is also advocacy, and it's very important advocacy.
And I will give you this example, my personal example. So when I was in sophomore year of college, in second year of college, I took a Hinduism class. And in the Hinduism class, the professor, who happened to be Indian, was basically saying that Hinduism was introduced into India by white people, like light-skinned people, who came from the northern part, maybe Central Asia, Europe, things like that, and they fought against these were called the Aryans, and they fought against these dark-skinned people called the Dravidians. That's why people in the southern part of India are darker than the people in northern part of India. Now, imagine this is in 1997, 98, let's say, okay, and I am one of 3 brown people sitting in that class. The class is about 30 people. Just like what Pushpita said, and this is a real life example. So people are sitting there, all these people, white people don't really care. They're taking notes, maybe they just have to take a class. Indians are not saying anything. The two other Hindus. So I raised my hand and I said, "Excuse me, professor, but what you just said is actually not true, because there are now new theories that have shown that there was no such thing as an Aryan invasion theory, that this is at the best conjecture by colonial scholars, things like that." So for 5 minutes, he was arguing with me, and I did not give up. Not that I was better expert than him, but I did not give up. I said, "No, I have the information, I have the evidence, I'm going to show you. At least you can discuss this evidence to say that this is actually not a true, that this is not 100% right." So after 5 minutes, he realized that I wasn't going to back down. So then he basically said, "Oh yeah, you're right. Yes, you're right. Actually, there are some other theories out there, things like that." So at that point, if I did not say that, the 25, 30 white people who were in the class would just learn, hey, this
They
is how
would have
Hinduism was
believed
born.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is advocacy at the base level.
And actually, at our DC
So if
event, we had a young girl we had some students who had done exactly that. So there was a girl from ninth grade who had actually, in her history lesson, basically asked her, challenged what her school and her teacher was teaching. And, in her case, she had actually driven change. That's great. And, we encourage more and more people to do that. And and this is sort of what we mean by grassroots, right? Because it's you as an individual, and we've had COHNA people who have challenged their corporate trainings on swastika, or on caste. So this is what grassroots means, that you are in somewhere, right? Whether it's your office, whether it's your school, college, Rotary Club, whatever, city council, and you hear something and you speak up. That's the grassroots part of it. How does COHNA play into that is, we will give you all the materials that you need. We have done the research already, because it's already a tough job to take on an institution, right? Whether it's your school or a city council or whatever. So you can focus on that. And then we are there to give you all the information. We've done the research. We are there to back you up. We can go in with you as an organization, which we have found is really the best combination. That, for example, you want to take up something in your kid's school. Go in as the parent, because the school has to give you a hearing if you're a parent. School does not have to give COHNA a hearing, but they have to give the parent a hearing. But the parent is weak as an individual, right? So if the parent goes in as part of a national organization like COHNA or Hindu Parents Network, then the school is going to pay more attention. So that's the power of grassroots and an organization working together in tandem. I like to say it's 2 + 2 = 6.
So if somebody wants to involve in COHNA and want to support, how they can do it?
Yeah, they can go to our website, kohna.org, COHNA.org. There's you can volunteer. So there's a button that says join us. So when you do that, you can volunteer. You can become a member. Membership is really important. So it's very cheap, $50 a year, nothing big. But you become part of the organization as a member. And then, when we have issues, you can actually say, oh, you can go with us and say, okay, we are representing our member in Boston, or our member in New Jersey, or a member in California, whatever the place is. So this is really helpful. You can also donate. We're always looking for funds, because we are a nonprofit organization. We're always looking to raise money for all the different initiatives and equipping our people with the financial resources they may have. So you can go there and you can donate as well. So you can join us as a volunteer. You can become a member, and you can donate. You can do all three. It's not either or. You can definitely do all three. And I suggest people who can do all three as well. And if you don't have a lot of time, the best thing to do is just support us by donating as well.
Yep.
And I think that is so important, because, see, one of the things we've talked about advocacy a lot. And I think we need to understand the country that we live in. This is a country where you have to represent yourself. And what we are doing or asking our community to do is actually as American as apple pie. And if you look at all other communities, they have very good, much bigger, stronger organizations that represent their interests. And, individuals are wonderful, and charismatic individuals can do a lot, but an organization has staying power. So, I could be very, very charismatic as an individual, but I'm going to take a trip to India. I'm going to have, I'm going to be sick sometime. I'm going to have work issues. Like, that's just life, right? I don't think anybody can claim that they're in a situation where none of that will happen. So if you are giving that, if you are harnessing that charisma within an organization, then the times when you are not available, which is 100% going to happen because you're human, the organization carries your mission forward, right? And the mission doesn't, it's not this stop and go sort of approach, which I think really hampers a lot of Hindu advocacy. So you need to have like a seamless thing that the work has to keep going on, because this is honestly a professional, this is a professional job, right? And I think sometimes I have felt in all our fight backs, Nikunji and I, we have commiserated with each other, and I'm like, I feel like a mom and pop shop fighting Amazon. So it's really sad that our community, for all its success, has not understood the importance of funding and supporting this kind of work, because it's just very important.
I believe you. But people has to open up their pockets and have to donate generously for this kind of cause, because Hindus are suffering much more than any other community in USA. I believe you strongly on that.
Yeah, and perfect example of that, Mananji, is that six temples got attacked. In the Bay Area where I live, right, in California, 6 Hindu temples were attacked between November 2023 and January 2024. Think about it. That should shock and scare everybody. First of all, the fact that you can have multiple attacks on the temples of one community, but even more shocking is the fact that it almost didn't matter, right? You've not seen much coverage about it. You've not seen many people talk about it. There were a few tweets that went out from the politicians in whose district it happened. Not all, but some of them condemned it, but not all. And it's almost like, okay, it's fine, let's move on. Can you imagine that happening to any other community and for it to not even matter? So this is actually classic Hindu phobia that we talk about, because many people will say, oh, it's a political term, etc., etc. But the fact that you have a community that you can attack and not even pay a price is really, really concerning. I think a couple of years ago, some may or may not remember, but there was a Hindu gentleman in Fremont who got attacked just for visiting his Taco Bell. We've all gone to Taco Bell or an equivalent of that, right? And he got attacked with 12-minute verbal assault, person spitting at him and, saying, you dirty Hindu, you're disgusting. I'm going to eat beef in front of you. You are eating your disgusting bean burrito. So there was no way you could pretend this was not about Hinduism. Yet people were like, why are you making this about Hinduism? So this is the level of denial that we have to deal with. And I think it's a very high level of problem and denial for an individual to deal with. So we need to really tackle it at an organizational level, and we need to understand the urgency of what's going on. Because, by the way, almost 2 years after that attack happened, nothing as that guy's attacker roams free. That's because the community has not rallied enough behind this issue.
Yeah. Nikunji, any last word from you?
No, I mean, Pushpita, you said it well. I think we have to be there. We have to be a voice, and we have to make sure that we stand up for what is right. We go to the mandir, we pray to Bhagavan, we read the Bhagavad Gita, we do all of these things, but we don't follow it sometimes by actually doing our karma yoga. And a lot of our community just brushes it down and just says, oh, forget it, just let it be, why rock the boat? But if you don't do that, then the next generation of Hindus, as they grow up in America, the following generations and things like that, they will learn that Hinduism is not really a good religion. Why should I even care? Yeah. To be very honest, today, a lot of kids have become atheists because they don't see a value in our traditions. And the reason they see that happens is because, number one, we don't teach them properly and we don't discuss with them. Number two is we don't stand up when wrong things are taught or wrong things happen. So for them, they're just saying, oh yeah, okay, my parents don't care. My uncle doesn't care. My community doesn't care. So why should I care? And then we can cry all we want that my son or my daughter is not following my tradition, or this is happening or that is happening. At the end of the day, nobody is going to do our work. That's what Sri Krishna says, that Arjuna, you have to pick up the Gandiva and you have to fight. I am not going to fight for you. I'll be there to guide you, but I'm not going to. So Krishna or Shankar or Mataji, whoever you follow, is not going to do the job. You have to do your karma.
You have to. Pushpita ji, anything from your end?
No, I think that's
you
a great way to sum it up.
So on behalf of both of you, I would like to say, I was hoping that somebody will say this, that if you don't have enough time, though Nikunji said that, but I would like to emphasize it again, that people, those who are listening, you don't have time. Sometimes I believe we are very not aggressive kind of community. We would like to defend. We are never attackers. So if you are frightened not to go with the advocacy theme, just open up your pocket. These guys are doing a noble job for the Hinduism. Just donate them. No time needed, nothing. Just donate generously to the COHNA.org and help them out. They are doing a really very nice cause for the Hinduism. Thank you. Jai Bharat.
Jai Bharat, Jai Hind, Namaste.
Jai Hind.